Welcome to Fated, a podcast brought to you by Magella and Carly, two romantasy-obsessed readers who believe that great books must include declarations of undying love and deep thrusts of desire. Diving into the spicy, smutty fantasy genre, we are here for both the rattling of stars and headboards, and our podcast starts with the worlds of SJM, but delves into other realms. Did we mention that washboard abs and wands of all kinds are welcome in this inclusive and magically charged space? No topic is off limits, and no one is forced to have only one favourite heroine. Welcome to Fated, where we are unabashedly and wholeheartedly hot and heavy for spicy fantasy fiction. It's time to sit down and smut up. Warning, spoilers ahead.
So Feyre either has to go through the 3 trials to prove her love for Tamlin or solve the riddle. And, you know, there's so many memes and like TikToks about people going, I knew what the answer to the riddle was. Like, I wouldn't have had to face the bloody worm. I'm like, oh, I didn't know the answer to the riddle because I wasn't focusing on the riddle because I was like, of course, there's going to be the trials because otherwise the book kind of ends. So she doesn't know the answer to the riddle, of course. So Amarantha throws her in the dungeon. And whilst in the dungeon, you know, they're beating her and starving her and all of that sort of stuff. And Lucian's visiting and sneaking in to try to get her ready. And then her first trial is the Midgard worm, which sounded so freaking disgusting and vile. But she kills it by placing a trap of human bones. Like, as you said, she's so clever.
I mean, she is literally being a warrior in there. She is a tracker, a hunter. She uses all of her skills, and so it's an animal, firstly. So she knows that it's going to track her with smell, but then she realizes that it's blind. So she knows that actually it's only her smell. So she covers herself in poo, like the dirty mud, which is essentially worm poo, so that she has at least, and everyone's taking bets on if she's going to survive, and all the like fairies are looking down into this pit and laughing at her, and you know, she's just kind of like, I've just got to stay alive and I've just got to outwit this giant worm, which has these huge teeth and, you know, and she's this tiny human. Yeah. And she comes up with this incredible way to kill it where she just breaks all these bones and puts them like in a pit where she knows he's going to come after her, and then builds herself a ladder out of bones to get up. You know, it's just like incredible.
If you put your reality hat on, which we don't do in Fantasyland, you would be like, that is impossible. She is human. That is impossible. When I read it back, I was like, I can see why some people are like, incredible. The worm bites her, so she gets a fever and gets infected and, you know, doesn't get any medical help. So you're like, oh my God, she's going to die from the infection. And then Rhysand comes to her cell and tells her that he will heal her so she can go and keep doing the trials if she will vow that she will spend a week per month with him at his court. So that's where that vow and the tattoo
3 weeks
comes.
They negotiate. So he was like 3 weeks, and then she's like, that's almost all the time. And he's like, you're in a position to negotiate and blah, blah, blah. So it ends up being a week out of every month. But she basically was just like, it was either that or die. Like she was so, you know, burning up with fever, vomiting in the corner. No one's come to save her. Lucian hasn't come this time. Tamlin hasn't come down at all because he's constantly under the, you know, guard of Amarantha. There's all these theories that she, you know, loved Tamlin and he rejected her, and that this was her way of getting back at him, or he insulted her somehow or something back in the day, and which we find out more and more about, you know, in further books. But it just, you know, like Rhysand is still looking very self-motivated here and kind of now a little bit like creepy. Like he's got this woman who is so obviously broken, and he's like, so like, I just want to spend time with you. Well, I want you to spend time
with me. Come to my house.
And it's either this or die. So I feel like I don't really care that I'm, you know, coercing you. And you're like, oh, this, I mean, I kind of felt like, I felt a little bit like, ooh, Rhysand when I first met him. Like, ooh, he's, you know, he's kind of got something, and could he be a bad boy that turns good? And then in this moment, I was a bit like, could you just be kinder to her? Could you like fucking give her a glass of water, or like you've managed to like magic yourself down here, and she is a mess. Like she's in pain,
covered in shit.
Oh my god, please help her.
She's literally covered in shit.
I'm really disappointed in Tamlin and Lucian at this stage too. I'm just like, fuck you all. Like she is this tiny breakable mortal with this huge heart, and she's getting mocked and jeered and like assaulted and tortured, and no one's really doing anything. Like, you know, do you like, is this going to end? Like, you know, I know that Romantasy has a good ending, so I'm kind of like, I'm fairly sure she's not going to die. But like at this stage, I'm a little bit like, you know, I'm not sure there's anyone I want her to end up with. Like all of these dudes, you know, I'm not really loving them. Like they're not stepping up for Feyre, especially Lucian, who I feel like was her most obvious friend, who had tried to kind of come down, and it felt like a really piss poor effort. Like, oh yeah, I can come down and I can like do this to your nose, but anything else, and also I'll get beaten, which kind of sounded like excuses, but we do find out that he did get beaten really badly, which is why he couldn't go down and help her, because he was actually incapacitated. So fair enough. But second trial actually brings Lucian back to the into the arena, because we didn't mention this, but Feyre is illiterate because she just ended up not learning to read when she was younger. Yep. Someone knew that, and they set up the trial was to kind of answer this question and pull the correct lever. And I think this is where we also need to mention that Rhys had put a tattoo on her hand.
Yes.
I feel like that's
so when they
instrumental to this trial.
Yes. Okay. So when they made that vow, when she said, yes, just help me and I'll come to your house and do whatever for a week every month. He leaves that swirled tattoo on her arm and a tattooed eye on the palm of her hand. She also got a lot of help in some of the trials too. So do you remember that she had to scrub all the mud off the floor in the hallway, but the water was dirty, so she would never have completed that task, and if she didn't, they were apparently going to roast her on a spit and torture her but not kill her. And Lucian's mother, the head of the Autumn Court, turns up and cleans the water mat with magic, and then the next task is she's meant to pick lentils out of an ash-filled fireplace, and the owner of the room could torture her if she didn't do that. And the owner of the room is actually Rhysand. And so because we know now that he's on her side, he just uses his magic to move the lentils from the fire pit into the bucket, and then puts a glamour over the guards. So they stop torturing her as much. So we see these elements of Rhysand trying to help, but not have Amarantha know that he's helping, obviously. Trials, and then we get to the lever one. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And then it's the giant spikes that are going to like crush them, and there's fire. Is there fire and spikes? And it was all just like, you know, all she had to do was answer this question, and Lucian also get crushed, and he's too far away to actually read the, you know, question on the thing, and then she goes to reach for one of them because she's like, I want in third chance, I've got to pick something, and her hand like kind of gets hot or like pain or something, and she's like, what? And then so she goes to reach for another one, and it does the same thing, and then she reaches for another and it has no response, so then she goes to another and it was the bad like heat or the pain, and then she reaches for the one that has no response, and that's the one she pulls. So that was really a incredibly tense thing, but also because we know now that, again, Rhys is helping because it's the eye. And I don't know, I mean, I can't really remember how I felt back then. Like, I feel like, you know, I always felt like this, could Rhys be someone? He seems very appealing. Like, he's suave and debonair, and he's the most beautiful man she's ever seen. And but he still is very, like, in the grey in terms of, you know, is he actually just a character who's out to hurt her a little bit, or
Well, because he's
like maybe he's
also
helping her, but just to play with her.
Yeah, well, remember he's also drugging her and making her dance in front of him to piss Tamlin off. So you're also, as a reader, like, fuck you. Like, what are you doing? You're using her at her weakest, at her most vulnerable, at her most broken to piss your nemesis off. So absolutely, I was like, oh, you're helping, but what the fuck? What are you doing over here, mate? Like, what's going on? I don't get this. I really want to like you, but I don't. Yeah.
That's exactly like I could like you, but it's just a little bit too. It's too much on that. There's not enough good in you yet that I can see, and it just feels like a bit like you're being an asshole, but you could just be a really good looking asshole that has moments of appeal.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit like, but Tamlin, he was fully like, I'm just like, you're doing nothing. Like I'm disliking you more and more because like, what the fuck? Like fight for her. Like, what are you doing?
And remember when like Rhysand put the magic paint on her so that he could tell if anyone was touching her, because he, like in inverted commas, doesn't like people messing with his property. So there's all of that sort of stuff going on, and you know, Tamlin and Feyre are sneaking away for some privacy when at the big party that they had, Rhysand coming in, forcing Tamlin to go back to the party, and then he kisses her, and then she tries to push him away, and Amarantha walks in. And so it's all this game stuff. And I remember at that point in the book being like, what? Why is that happening? Why is he doing that? And there were so many, as we know with Sarah, she just continued, like there's so many layers of plot. Because there's also, we haven't even talked about like the whole plot line with Jurian and things like that she weaves in. So it was at this point of the story, you're just like, oh my God, there's so many different layers here. What is going on? And there's so many possibilities here. Of course, that is why you go and run to the next book, and why her writing is so popular and compelling and addictive, like crack, as you said. But yeah, this was the point. I was like, why did he send Tamlin out? Why did he kiss her? And he obviously wanted Amarantha to see that. And yeah, and then obviously it all just, it hits the fan. The SHIT hits the fan. Amarantha blows it.
Yeah, it just gets really, I think as well, that's like, well, it just feels like at this stage, there's just so much going on just in terms of like the trials and staying alive. Like, I feel like, yes, there's all these undercurrents of things, but I feel like, honestly, I noticed them more in a reread. Like in that first read, it was just like my focus was just so intensely on like, is Feyre going to live? Like, I assume so, but I just don't fucking know at this stage because, like, she seems very broken, and could it lead into something else? There was so many kind of, I assumed she'd be okay, but it was just so gory. Like, I feel like it was such a bleak, you know, trial. Like, it was just felt really evil and gross, and I was just like,
yeah,
give me
so
some
great.
relief.
You should
like,
read it.
You know,
it's amazing. You're really talking it up.
I mean, I have reread it multiple times. Oh my God, yes, you should definitely read it. But I said, like, that's what I'm saying. The reason why we love this book is because it took us to all of these places. Like, yes, there was like intrigue and mystery, and then there was like kind of this slow burn, and then you are meeting and connecting with all these characters, and you know that there's this possibility of a better life for Feyre. But this part of the book is just like, there is like terror and there is despair, and especially when we get to that third trial, and she is really mentally broken. And that beautiful moment where I think is like where I turned is where music was piped in from somewhere, and I just knew it was Rhys. I was like, there is no way any other character is getting introduced into, like, it's him. Like, I was like, I have this feeling it's this beautiful music. She dreams of like the stars. We don't know the significance of that yet, but it was this moment of like, I felt like that's when I had hope again that she was going to survive and that I was going to get some kind of happy ending, because up until that point, like, yeah, she's defeated the worm. Yeah, she hasn't been crushed, but she is broken right now. It is a lot, and no one's helping her. And
so second trial involves being put into a pit with a fence in the middle, and Lucian is chained on the other side.
she had to pick one of the levers and they were going to get crushed. And then I think the third one is literally just her having to answer the riddle in front of Amarantha and she has
to kill the fairies. She had to kill the fairy by stabbing them in the heart. How
yes.
can you forget that? Yes.
I have to kill these two innocent fairies that I've never met. One's a youngish boy, and one is this, girl. Again, sort of a youngish girl, not children, but and one's crying and pleading for their life, and the other one's saying the prayer and saying I understand and stuff. And then the third one, so she kills these two, and she literally is if the third person is another fairy, I will kill myself instead. I will turn this knife on myself. I cannot kill another person. And then it's Tamlin. And everyone just assumes that, oh my God, if she loves him, she wouldn't kill him. And then she was just but Amarantha wants Tamlin. So why would Amarantha want me to kill him? And then she remembers all those things.
She remembers. And this is where the foreshadowing and the little things that Sarah drops, the little breadcrumbs that she puts in along the way, where she remembers that Alis told her that Tamlin has a stone heart, or a heart of stone. And she's so she takes the risk. And she plunges that dagger into Tamlin's
and she never remembers. I know. Yes, and she remembers that he never had a heartbeat when she lay on his chest. I think that was a tiny detail that at the time, I just skimmed on by, because I think it was she's I lay on his chest and I just couldn't hear the heartbeat or something. And she just thought it must have been so faint, or her hearing wasn't, or he had such a quiet heartbeat or something. And of course it's a throwaway line. So you're just okay.
I know. Just weave that back in and go, that's right. And this is, this is again the point in all Sarah books where you are it is so fast paced and it is so intense and there's so much happening and it's just you're gasping, you can't breathe. Everyone in your household needs to leave you the F alone because you are just right in it. And you're oh my God, she's just stabbed Tamlin. Okay, no, he's okay. And so then all the fairies around are yelling and saying, Amarantha, you have to break the spell. Feyre's done it. She's completed it all. Oh my God, this human beat Amarantha. And then, of course, Amarantha calls them all fools and says, they're not doing that. She solved the riddle and she did this and she did this, but no, I didn't tell you when I would release them. I didn't tell you when. And so then she just fucking kills Feyre. She just uses her magic and there was snapping bones. Oh, no, it was bone by bone. It was slowly, wasn't it? Yeah. It was bone by bone and she's dying in front of everyone. And then Feyre realizes that the riddle answer is love. Of course it is. Of course it's love. And then she says it in her dying breath and the fairies are released of their masks. Their masks sort of fall away and the High Lords get their powers back. And then Tamlin kills Amarantha and I was great, at least you fucking did something. You did something. That's good. Well done, Tamlin. Now that you've been released of your mask, now that you're free. But Feyre is on the ground with her head at the wrong angle.
Yeah, snaps her neck. But she's also talking... sort of telling her experience of this, obviously the agony of the torture and everything, but then she realizes that there is love, and then she hears Rhysand, actually before all this, when she starts getting tortured, Rhysand is fighting to get to her, and Tamlin's kind of also yelling, but this is unexpected that Rhysand is, because one would expect Tamlin is, because he's meant to love her, and that's the whole thing. And then Rhysand's fighting to get to her, and then Amarantha knocks him out or throws him against a wall or something. And then she gets it out and she says it's love, and then Amarantha snaps her neck at the same time that sort of Tamlin, and it's all kind of happening, and Tamlin goes after her and rips out her throat and stuff. And Rhys has run over to Feyre, and Feyre's gone into the other place and is feeling she could just let go, but there's this thread which she thinks is the bargain, and it's this tiny thread, like a lifeline, and she holds on to it. And she feels like that's where she's meant to go. It will take her home, and she's not ready to leave yet. So she like pulls herself back up through this thing, and all the High Lords give her a kernel of their magic to bring her back. And it's the only way to bring someone back from the dead is to get a kernel of magic from all 7 courts, which never, ever happens. And it did. And she comes back. And then Tamlin kisses her and is like, oh, my God, like, I love you and blah, blah, blah. And Rhysand kind of steps away. And they have this moment where they look at each other and she knows that she has this realization that he tried to fight for her and that something has shifted and that, but nothing else, but just a moment. And then she's like, and I'm here with Tamlin, but also I've just been brutalized and I've just come back from dying and, this kind of, so it's like, and everyone's cheering and celebrating and, she's a hero and stuff, but also she has just killed 2 innocent Fae. So she's also now broken inside, she's just like, was it worth it? Like, why am I worth more than these 2 other lives? She has that kind of, she thinks differently to a fairy. Like, to her, mortality is so precious. Like, once you lose your life, that's it. And it's so fragile for them. Whereas fairies are much more, they live for hundreds or thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole kind of like existential thing happening with Feyre, and it's all kind of happening in this split second. Like, if you filmed it, you'd have to have like a shot of her like having eye contact with Rhysand and this kind of feeling, and then sort of like this relief and this love looking at Tamlin, but also this kind of like bleak hollowness, and like everyone would be chaotic and there'd be weeping and cheering and joy, and then the evil people would be running away because they know that they're about to be killed, and it would be such a chaotic medley of everything. And that's how it was written too, like that's how it felt. And then there's this little after sort of like this sort of after moment where it's like the story's happened and he's kind of wrapping up, and we know that they're going back to the Spring Court, and Feyre and Rhys have this moment where she kind of wanted to say like, thanks for fighting for me, and he wanted to check that she was okay, and then he had this weird moment where he like, freaked out and he stumbled backwards, and there's a facial expression and he just looked shocked and he just left, and she was a bit kind of like, she had this feeling of like, oh, I don't know, there's something missing.
I really loved that. It's like page 412, where he shows up at the manor, at the Spring Court Manor, and she goes outside. Tamlin's in bed asleep and she feels a thread deep inside. So she goes outside and he's there, Rhysand's there, and she just looks at him and says like, why? As in, why did you help me, kind of thing. And he said, because when the legends get written, I didn't want to be remembered for standing on the sidelines. I want my future offspring to know that I was there and that I fought against her at the end, even if I couldn't do anything useful. And then he goes, because I didn't want you to fight alone or die alone. And she says, thank you. And then we get that mischievous grin of like, oh, I doubt you'll be saying that when I take you to the night court. Like, that little moment of, oh God, what's going to happen at the night court? What's she going to be put through there? Give the girl a break. She's just gone through hell. She's literally died and resurrected. But I really love that. Like, I didn't want you to die alone. Oh. Yeah, that's kind of how it all...
it really shows this, like,
wraps up.
There's something more to Rhys that we, like, there's this integrity and this honor and this something where you're like, like, you want him to be good. He is written that you want him to be good. It's just that there are so many actions that he takes where it is like it puts him in that shady zone, and it's not like, it's not in a good sexual way where you're like, they're just, he seems like a bit of a creep and an asshole and just a bit like not a good person. But then you're like, but there are these little flashes. And so, but I do feel like I'm really there for Feyre in this book. Like, it is like this epic heroine journey, like, really there's Tamlin, and obviously he brings her into the the magic realm, but it is demonstrated that he is not the hero or the Prince Charming or the person
Savior
that has all the power. Exactly, that she actually is the one that has gone in, that is willing to risk everything, that is literally put her life on the line, and also utilized her tough upbringing to be able to withstand this. She is a fragile, breakable mortal in this world of people that have incredible power and magic. Like, it is very kind of David versus Goliath sort of energy. So I feel like it doesn't fit the usual, like, it definitely wasn't this girl meets boy or girl meets fairy and this kind of, you know, tumultuous push-pull, the tropes. And I think that's why there is this, it feels different. It's beautifully written and it made us feel everything. I feel like even though it didn't give me necessarily the happiest of endings, like just reading that, the trials section alone, I was like, do not come near me. I will be unavailable for life for the duration of the rest of this book. I can't breathe properly. I think I'm sweating. My heart is very high. Like, I feel, you know, like I'm barely sure it's going to end okay, but
we don't know.
Not sure. I'm new to this genre.
Yeah. And this author, does she just kill off like FMCs like in the first book? We didn't know. It was all new. And look, it really just has everything that we love about fantasy romance. It really does. Like, it ticks all the boxes without being cliche and relying too heavily on the tropes. Still really unique, but had everything we wanted. Hence why it's a fave.
Still, I feel like out of the series though, it's my least favorite book, and I love it. You know what I mean? Like, out of all the books, if I had to rank them in order, and of course you rank them in order for different reasons and what they give to you and sort of, I guess, the feelings you experience through it, but also because we've obviously, these are new characters and new relationships, and as we build upon that, you know, kind of it feels like this is a great book, and I really enjoyed it, and I've reread it multiple times, but the series gets better and better.
Solid.
Which is why half the world is just hanging out with this sixth book, which apparently is going to have a lilac cover. That is the current, you know, because each book has a color. And
I'm wearing lilac tonight, so I must have known. Look, solid first book in a series. I remember finishing it and driving to Kmart. I don't normally buy my books at Kmart, but I was like, what's open? Where can I get books? And I went and I bought every book in the series that was on the shelf. I think one was not there. I think Silver Flames, maybe. I just didn't even, it was just out of the car, into Kmart. There they are, in the trolley, home, crack the spine. And I don't do that for many. I don't think I've ever done that since, even at all. Like, I just, solid first book in a series. And I don't know what else we need to share, really, about it. We've gone for an hour and 20.
Yeah, it was so great. It was so great. I mean, you know, I think we've really covered it. We've expressed how we feel. If they don't enjoy that, then they obviously didn't enjoy ACOTAR. It's that obvious. It's that. If you were on the edge of your seat, nodding along furiously with everything we were saying, you're just not an ACOTAR.
I do wonder who will stick with us through an hour and 20 or 2 episodes of just one book. We haven't even got to the thick, chunky books in the series.
But, I mean, I feel like if you look at the reels, the ACOTAR love is like, it's a very real thing. Like, it's like that ACOTAR obsession. I feel like this probably, I mean, we should just share it. I don't know why these text over videos, these text over videos do so well. But it's like, I do just try and have these thoughts about ACOTAR or Fourth Wing or the real stereotypes of this genre, because I feel like that's what people want to talk about.
Yeah, they do.
So I think that if we just talk about
I think that the SJM Yeah, I think the SJ fandom is right up there with the Swifties. I like with that level of passion and analysis and fury when people don't love this series. It's wild and it's great, and we're having a lot of fun with it. And I get messages from friends in their 60s saying they're loving this series. I see young girls starting to read it. I'm just like, yes, more reading. It's great. It's fun. It's light. We know it's fantasy and it's not real, and that's why we love it. And just leave us alone if you don't enjoy it. Just move along. Move along. All right. We need to wrap it up, though, because I need to go to bed and read another few chapters of Blood and Steel. I'm glad you're liking it. Wilder Hawthorne, he's a bit hot. And she's great. I love Feyre already.
She's got some real feisty sass, and there's just the knife throwing. I'm just like, yes. Of course.
Another one. All right, my love.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you felt like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you have been dying to have with someone to discuss all the tiny details and possible plot twists of the books that you've recently read. Perhaps you don't have someone to chat to after you finish one of those epic books, so please give the show a follow and we would be honoured to be your book-obsessed friends. But mostly though, we hope it was fun, it gave you a giggle, it made you gasp or encouraged you to pick up a different author. Please share it with someone who you think would also love it, and drop us a review, letting us know what you loved and what you want to hear from us in the future. We will be back with another episode soon. Happy reading.